but every few centuries there's a major outbreak, a pandemic. Some argue that it originated in southern China because the government there had reported a deadly flu there. The pandemic reached all corners of the world and killed about 1. Advice was given to people to wash their hands often, to isolate the sick and to reduce contact with their neighbours. It banned public gatherings, closed schools and barred hospital visitors.
Wait, he's not talking about COVID-19? He's talking about the
influenza outbreak of 1918, better known as the Spanish flu.
Wow. The resemblance is uncanny. The resemblance is uncanny. You know what else happened 100 years ago? And it started a little bit before the First World War and went on up to the Second World War, the development of language learning methodology. Of course, before the 20th century, people studied English, Italian, Portuguese, Chinese, but things changed a lot during the first half of the 20th century. And that is because the world was becoming more and more globalized, and as a result of these wars, people started to interact more, and also we could have more clear concepts of what a nation is. So basically, if you were from France, you needed to speak French. If you're from Spain, you needed to speak Spanish. Even though there are many populations in Spain, like the Basque people, the Catalan people living near each other, and they had different cultures and languages, there was this new ideology that each new state should have their own national anthem. Flag, language, culture, politics, philosophy, which somehow influenced the way people looked at languages, because now they wanted to know more about a language by studying these national languages. So the first half of the 20th century is very important to the history of language teaching, because things started to get names. People started to found schools, and each school had a different rationale on how languages should be taught, how people learned, procedures and techniques that should be adopted. And this is why we refer back to over 100 years ago when the Spanish flu was taking place, or First World War. But just like the uncanny resemblance between COVID-19 and the Spanish flu, you will see that many schools and educators that are proposing new methodologies, procedures, and techniques are actually resembling principles that were brought about in the beginning of the 20th century. So we have a long journey studying the most preeminent methodologies and approaches we had with regards to language learning and teaching in the 20th century. This is where you are this week here in the first methods. You will be reading and doing some activities about the grammar translation method, the direct method, the oral approach, and the audiolingual method. After each reading, what you will do is that you will watch some sample classes of each methodology. And also, because there are so many different methodologies and approaches, you need to find a way of registering it so that it becomes easy for you to trace back, and also it will become easier when you're trying to develop your own teaching philosophy or your own class and you want to know whichever methodology is about. You will have some very concise and thorough notes, and I'm going to tell you a little bit now how you can do that. So whenever I was trying to study these methodologies and approaches, this is how I did it. I would have the name of the approach or methodology here, and I would put all the key information in a chart, just like that, like teórico. You see that sometimes I'm using English, sometimes I'm using Portuguese. It doesn't matter because these are just my notes. It's a way for me to remember these things and for me to contrast two schools of thought more easily. And I put like some bulletin points, and I will have like some very specific remarks, and then this is how I do it. And inspired by the model I used, I created a template for you to start doing it if you want. Now, this is the template I created. This is not mandatory. You're going to use it if you want, but I can guarantee, I can assure that this is going to make your learning process much easier and less painful. This is what we have here. You will have the topic, and then you have the main points here, the main keys, and then you just have to type in whatever you find important. And the most important session is this one here, minhas impressões, my impressions. Because after you analyzed everything, what are your thoughts about this? This is what I want to know, because this is what's going to help you to become a better teacher, to develop your teaching philosophy, and to plan your classes in a better way. What I suggest is that do this after every reading. Now, let's suppose you don't like using Word or Google Docs. Well, just make sure you transpose all this info to your notebook, or just make sure you organize this info in a mental map the way you want. Just make sure you're not skipping any of the important info. That's it. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you will likewise enjoy the readings and the other videos you will have to watch for the week. Thank you. See ya. Was right a little bit before first, and it was a little bit got it and it started a little bit before the First World War,